What is up, gaming guys and gals? Dan the Old Man, Team 520 Sierra Vista. I'm here with Dana. I wanted to get things. Dana's a grinder. So for those of you who don't know what grinders are, they travel to all the PPTQs, as many GPs as they can. They're trying to get as many pro points and correct me if I'm wrong, as many pro points as they can. That way they can hopefully make the Pro Tour. That's the ultimate goal, correct?
Yep, that's the goal.
Okay. All right, so I just wanted to get, for a lot of you guys that are wanting to get to that point, kind of what the mindset of what a grinder is, what the mindset of a super competitive player is, because I can give you the mindset of like a casual competitive. I go to PPTQs hoping to do well, but I don't grind to all the PPTQs. I don't grind to all the GPs. But this gives you, if you guys want to get to that hyper competitive level, this gives you an idea of what mindset you have to have and what you have to do. So, Dana, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into Magic, stuff like that. Let's start that way.
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Dana. A lot of people know me around here. I'm one of the admins on the Service and Magic League page. If you check that out, that's where we kind of have like a central hub for all of our Magic stuff around this area. And it kind of extends up into Tucson a little bit. But I started playing Magic in around the Nemesis era. Mercadian Mask was like the first set I bought a pack from, so I don't know if it was actually out at that time, or it was out, but I don't remember like where it was out, but that was the first pack I ever bought. I played through high school, and then when I went into college, I kind of had to take a break because college comes first, getting that degree, but after that I came back and started playing again, and then it was right around the end of 2015-ish, start of 2016 when I started really becoming like a competitive grinder. So I've been around the game for a lot of years, I've played a lot of Magic, just trying my best.
Okay. Awesome. So I guess my first question is, okay, so as a grinder, you kind of, like me, I prefer standard, but I'll play modern, I'll play popper. But as a grinder, you really, you have to kind of be good at everything, right?
Right. And it's not necessarily you have to be good at everything, but you have to have the familiarity with all of the formats. So
right.
Your three biggest competitive formats are standard, modern, and to some extent legacy. There are some legacy GPs that happen, but standard and modern are your two biggest formats where you really are on the grind, with standard being like the highest. So you kind of have to have a familiarity with what's going on with all of those. And I don't know if you've heard of the term metagame, but you have to understand what's prevalent in the metagame, how the metagame is shifting, what cards are really good, what cards are bad, what cards are kind of like, how can I break this card? And then just the idea of how do these cards interact with the other cards that I know and I'm expecting to see. So
okay, so now when it comes in terms of like deck choice, so now obviously you want to play the best deck that you can that gives you the opportunity to win. Now, do you look at decks from the state of mind whereas I'm trying to find something that beats the best deck, or I'm going to play the best deck?
So there's kind of this weird philosophy when it comes to really competitive decks. It's if you feel like you have a solid lock on the metagame and you know exactly what to expect and you're going to quote-unquote call the tournament, then you can go ahead and try and break it. But a lot of the times you just want to be playing the best deck and mastering it. You want to go in, you want to get the cards that you know this deck has a certain win percentage against this other deck. I want to elevate my game to where I make sure I'm within that percentage band, and then what I can do to make myself 5% better. So a lot of the times, especially when you're just getting into competitive Magic, you just want to find the best deck and learn its ins and outs, learn the intricacies of all the interactions. And then after that, and once you understand metagames and kind of what you need to beat certain decks, that's when you can say, okay, I kind of want to put this card in here because I think it can give me a better matchup against this. Whereas it might not have as good a matchup percentage against this deck, but that's because you're saying, I don't think this deck is going to be there as much, so let me elevate my percentage against this one, lower it against this one, because I'm expecting to see more of that first one.
Right. Okay. So, like, if you're looking to... So, like you said, if you're looking to play the best deck, are you kind of looking for, like, the mirror match? Are you kind of looking for those spicy little techs that's going to give you the advantage? Or do you just try to learn the mirror match that much better than the next guy?
So, again, it's kind of like the two school of thought. You can have something that you can think breaks the mirror, but a lot of the times, I like to call that being fancy.
Right.
A lot of the times being fancy kind of gets you in trouble, especially in Magic. There's a lot of cool cards in Magic. There's a lot of cool cards with unique designs, but a lot of the times a lightning bolt is better than, say, something that can reanimate or that you can recur for 2 damage from your graveyard. So a lot of the times you just want to play the lightning bolt to kill a creature once, as opposed to maybe get the 2-for-1 with one of the cards in your graveyard. So
Makes
a lot of
sense.
the times you just want to like master that mirror and understand, like, if I play this card and then he plays this card, what's his expected next line of play, and then what's my expected next line of play, and how can I make sure that I put my opponent into a position where I'm in the winning position and they're in the losing position.
Okay, makes perfect sense. Now, when it comes to your mindset going into a tournament, because I know, like, if you're going into like a Friday Night Magic, your mindset's different than if you're going into a PPTQ or a GP. So let's just kind of walk us through what that mindset is when you're going into one of those and you know it's coming up. So take us through how you prepare and how you get yourself ready for that, and even going into the day of, going into how you prepare yourself up to that point.
Okay, so a lot of the mindset, and this is something I tell like every person who's learning any new game, never expect to win. You want to try your best to always win, and winning is the ultimate goal, obviously, but you have to set your expectations and your goals to be realistic. And this is just something you do in general in life, too.
Right.
You obviously want to be a millionaire, but you don't say to yourself, I'm going to earn $1 million by next week. It's just not realistic. So kind of like what I'll do is, especially, so we'll take like Modern, for example. Modern is this wide open, vast format that you can play one of any number of 30 decks that you will probably expect to see in a tournament at least once.
Right.
So when you kind of go in with that, you gotta kind of think, okay, I have this certain play style. So for me, it's more like mid-range, semi-control elements. So what I'll do is I'll look at the decks that are performing really well, and I'll kind of latch onto a mid-range deck that I really want to play. And I'll say, okay, I want to start testing with this deck. And with testing, what I'll usually do is, if I don't have all the cards, I'll proxy it out. And this is something a lot of people will have to understand if you become competitive. There is no shame in proxying out a deck to play it, to understand it. You don't have to have all the cards for it. You start testing it out and then deciding, okay, I like how this card works, I don't like how this card works, but why does this card exist in this deck? Okay, here's the certain situation. And then a lot of the times, I actually just don't play. I'll go in and I'll look at the philosophy of the deck. A lot of, one of my friends, Frankie, he'll tell you in Legacy that the blue cantrip cards have this huge philosophical background on like when you sequence them. It's something you do learn through playing a lot, but it's also something you can study up just like you're studying any regular school subject. In Modern, one of the biggest cards is Path to Exile. When do I path a creature correctly to get the most benefit out of it? Because it's not always during my main phase to get a blocker through. It's not always during their upkeep or their draw phase. So there's just a whole philosophy behind every single card in Magic that you can like go in and understand. So once you do the play testing and you kind of decide, okay, is this the deck I want to play or is this the deck I don't want to play? You kind of weed those down, and then once you decide the deck you want to play, then especially Modern, you kind of decide, here's probably my top 10 matchups. And by that I mean these are the ones I expect to play the most out of this tournament. So at a Grand Prix, you kind of look at MTG Goldfish is the perfect example for this. They'll break down the metagame into the metagame share and percentage, and they'll kind of give you what the top, I think about 15 decks are. So you kind of want to go up against those, have a friend with you, proxy those decks, and start playing against them. That way you can kind of get an interaction on how you're supposed to play against them. And then once you've played a few games with each one, you sit down and you decide what your sideboard is going to be. So you want to build a sideboard, especially Modern might not be the best case for this because it's so wide open, but you want to build a sideboard that will help your deck get a better percentage into the next game 2 and 3 if you've won or lost game 1. And kind of the philosophy behind that is when you're effectively building a sideboard, you're not building 15 cards to substitute. What you're doing is you're building a 60 card configuration for a specific matchup. So sometimes it boils down to like a 1-for-1 if you need a graveyard hate card. But sometimes there's little minute things where, say, you want a third path to exile in this matchup, but only 2 in this one. So that kind of boils down, and that's something you learn with time. So then after you've done that, you're prepared, you understand your sideboarding, you've written out a sideboard guide. This will go into like when we start talking about the tournament, you go to the actual tournament. A lot of the times this is either going to require you to drive many, many hours to get to your tournament location, to fly to GPs. So there's a bit of travel, so there's a little cost there, but a lot of the times you have to understand that. And I feel like a lot of people kind of lose this idea is, even though you're a competitive player, you're still playing for fun, and this is still your hobby. So you're not wasting money by driving to these places, especially if you're going with friends, because there's a lot to be said for the gathering part of Magic, as opposed to just Magic and playing a game. But so you travel. You either travel the day of or you travel the day before. I always recommend getting a lot of sleep the night before, at least 8 hours, because Magic's a mental game. So you got to be on your toes to understand your matchups that you're going into. And then you're going into round 1. You just got to be calm. Every round 1 of every tournament I ever have, I always get just a little bit of nervous. Just kind of like shaking out the nerves and understanding, okay, I got to get used to the environment, I got to be understanding I'm around all these players, and I have to play in a much more, I have to play a lot tighter. If you don't understand what that means, it's kind of just like you have to make sure you understand that you can't take things back. You have to be deliberate and pronounced with your actions. You have to make sure that you're understanding the rules at a little bit of a higher level than just getting the new cards and understanding, okay, well, how does this interact? You're kind of expected to know that at a competitive level.
Right.
But
which is part of the reason that you do all the play testing.
Exactly. But if you ever have questions, one of the biggest things about competitive tournaments is their judges. And these judges aren't there to judge you and harshly penalize you for certain things. There are times where you're going to get a penalty because you missed a trigger or you did something wrong. But a lot of the times it's just, hey, just play a little tighter, you're okay, nothing wrong with that. If it starts to become repetitive, then there's a little bit more. But judges are there to always help you. Judges are never there to scare you. They're never there to bring down the band hammer or anything like that. So then you just kind of approach each match like you would play a normal game of Magic. It's really important to understand that the person you're sitting across from is still a human. You're both still playing just a fun game to have fun. Everybody's going to get a little salty because of how their deck worked or the misplays or whatever that they made. But in the end of the day, you're both there because you both love the game, and that's what you're there to play.
Right.
Kind of like tournament semantics, always suggest having a bottle of water. It will keep you hydrated. Being hydrated is one of the most important things you can do, especially in a mental aspect. And then having a protein-based and fat-based snacks. So things like trail mix, beef jerky, those things are good because those help stimulate your brain. So
awesome. That is a lot of good information. Now, with the announcement that Wizards made today, yeah, I know that was a lovely announcement that you got. You know, how does that change grinding? So if people want to get into grinding, you know, grind more and get more competitive with the changes that Wizards made. And I don't think we have all the information, but with what information we have at hand, where does that leave going into the competitive scene?
So I think the biggest issue that kind of came up was the fact that they're eliminating PPTQs. And the PPTQ structure was a structure that allowed you to essentially have a preliminary tournament that qualified you for a regional tournament, and then if you did well in that one, that's how you got to the pro tournament. Well, a lot of people complained about that because it was an extra tournament that they had to qualify for, and then they had to travel for that, so they felt like it was just almost like a money grab is what I kind of got from some people. But what grinding in the sense with PPTQs is I would go to a PPTQ pretty much every weekend that there was. And that's how you essentially get better at the game. You just continuously play. And so without having that eliminates a major component of, quote, the grind. So a lot of grinding now is going to boil down to how many Grand Prix can you make a year, or excuse me, how many Grand Prix events at a Magic Fest can you make it to?
Yeah, because it's got to be a Magic Fest now, right? And what is a Magic Fest? Can you explain that real quick? I don't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah, no problem.
I mean, I think a lot of people are going, what the hell, you know? So
yeah, so what they kind of did is they kind of rebranded what their open Premier Play events are. Open meaning anybody can go to. Premier Play meaning path to the Pro Tour. These events are at a much higher scale than any local tournament you'll go to or any local PPTQ that there used to be. So these events are kind of just a culmination of all these different things in Magic, and they have super competitive events, they have casual friendly events that they go to, and then they're also combining these with the Pro Tours. So that's actually something I'm kind of excited about, is if you land on one of the Magic Fest that you're going to that also has a Pro Tour associated with it, you can actually be a spectator of the Pro Tour now and have a reason to go spectate the Pro Tour if you're not qualified.
Hey, I'm already going to the GP, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So the component in there, the largest open Premier Play, is called a Grand Prix. And in these Grand Prix, these award Pro Tour invites to the top 8 plus. Hopefully they will keep anybody with an X and 2 record. X meaning that's how many wins you have, and then the 2 meaning how many losses you have. That's a common terminology you'll hear a lot of in competitive play. Because it doesn't matter about how many wins you have, it always matters about the losses, because the losses are what usually going to cut you from a top 8 or a top 16, top 64, that kind of thing.
Right, because it's the point system.
Exactly. So when you get to these tournaments, that's where you're that's where the grind is going to be now.
Okay.
But unfortunately, those things happen around the world. We're fortunate enough in the U.S. to have quite a lot, but there's a lot of countries in the world that are not as lucky as us, unfortunately. So the grind for us is all about how many different big cities can I travel to, how many airlines can I go to, how many hotels can I afford now.
Right.
But what does sound promising is that there are some avenues for local stores to still hold what are going to be known as just regular PTQs, Pro Tour qualifiers. So the winners of those tournaments will get automatic invites now, rather than having to go from one tournament to another, then getting an invite. But those are stores that are going to have massive weight to them, have been around for quite a while, and can host 150, 200 people. So.
Yeah, there's only a couple, like here in Arizona, there'd only be a couple.
Yeah, in Arizona, I could think of maybe 3 off the top of my head.
Right. So now that they got this new system going in, obviously it's going to change everything. I know MTGO used to have, I don't know if they still do, had opportunities for PTQs and PPTQs and stuff like that. Is that still going to be an avenue, or are they eliminating those as well?
So they said that the PTQ structure online is going to remain much unchanged, at least for the next year, while they implement sort of what they're doing in paper. So I don't know. I've never played Magic Online, which is kind of a bad thing for me as a grinder, because I should be testing a lot more on Magic Online.
Right.
But I just don't have the resources available to continuously do that.
You spend so much money on paper that...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I guess I could kind of bring up here, since we kind of mentioned it, is that in order to be a grinder, you either have to accept the fact of reality that you're going to be spending a lot of money in order to keep up with the best deck in the format. And you can do this through one of 2 ways. You can either just buy all the cards you want for the decks and then just hold them, or what some competitive players do is they will buy a deck, and then once that deck falls out of favor, trade it in to get stuff for the new decks.
Right.
But to be a serious grinder on all the formats, you're doing that for all 3 formats. And then kind of a controversial topic when you get into Legacy is how expensive it is, but
yeah.
if that's an avenue you want to play, then that's something you're going to have to realize that, hey, you got to understand that everything is an investment in life. And so if you want to play on the Pro Tour, and if playing Legacy is probably one of your easiest because you understand that format, you've been playing that format forever, you probably want to play the cards and buy the cards. That way you can play in the Premier event if you think you have a good enough chance to top 80 to get to the Pro Tour. So.
Awesome. So we mentioned Magic Online. Of course, we've got MTG Arena now and stuff like that. So for people trying to get better at the game, do you think that those are a good avenue because you got to play a lot. In order to get better, you got to play a lot. So do you think those are a good avenue and a realistic way of getting better at the game? Or do you think it takes away from being face-to-face and having that pressure of being face-to-face with somebody?
So there's kind of two schools of thought here. So I kind of alluded that being a grinder, it's probably bad for me not to be playing on Magic Online.
Right.
And that's because I don't just get as much play time. A lot of the times it really just boils down to repetition. One of my Frankie uses this idea of the Ant deck in Legacy, which stands for Ad Nauseam Tendrils. It's a sword deck. And that deck you can actually just test by playing Solitaire and setting up a condition with yourself, like having to win by turn 3, I have to beat a Wasteland, something along those lines, and you can just Solitaire. And then when you add in an opponent, it kind of gives you that condition somebody else has set for you rather than your own self-set condition. So that's what the playing does. And playing that with so many repetitions, you just get better and better and better and better.
Right.
So that's the benefit of doing it online. And then online, the other benefit is that you can't make mistakes mechanically. And by that I mean you can't miss triggers because there's an algorithm that's checking for triggers. You can't accidentally break rules that you might not necessarily know about. Card interactions work the way they're supposed to 99% of the time unless the card is broken. So those kinds of things you kind of learn. But when you get into paper and you go to these premier events, the earnest is on you to understand that and remember those triggers. One of the controversial topics ones is Chalice of the Void. So Chalice of the Void is a card that's XX, comes into play with X counters on it, where X is equal to the amount of mana you pay for it. And then it counters spells that have a converted mana cost equal to X. But this effect doesn't just happen automatically. It triggers every time your opponent plays a spell. So on Magic Online, it's always going to counter that spell no matter what. But if you're playing the card and your opponent plays it and you forget the trigger, their spell is going to resolve. So there's a lot of mechanical differences you have to understand. And then, like actually physically mechanically is playing with your hands. Playing with cards in your hand can actually lead to issues. A big one would be, I believe it was Pro Tour Kanzatark here. You can watch Patrick Chapin make a mistake where he was scrying with a Johnny Mentor of Heroes, I think is the card, and he accidentally placed the card down on top of his hand, which caused a major controversy because his opponent called the judge on him because he made the claim that he no longer knows what cards were in his hand before the spell resolved. So, or not the spell, the ability. So there's a bunch of different controversies with that, but just in general, being able to shuffle, like you can't look at your opponent's deck while you're shuffling. So a lot of the time you'll see players be doing this. They'll be riffling and making sure that the cards are straight down. That way they don't see them. If you knock a card over, that's looking at extra cards, and there's actually a penalty for that if it's intentional or unintentional. So there's a lot of mechanical things in the game when you get to the paper level that you never experience online. So when it comes to online, it's good for repetition. It's good to learn the rules. It's good to actually learn what your deck is supposed to be doing. But you still have to have the reps in paper to understand, like, I have to shuffle a specific way. I have to remember my triggers. I have to do these specific things. Otherwise, I can't play at that same efficiency as I did online.
Right. I mean, like Arena will even automatically tap your lands for you. So, I mean, that even comes into you're not being able to learn how to tap your lands correctly because you may just tap your lands and then look at it and go, oh, I tapped that wrong because now I don't have the mana to cast X spell.
Yep, precisely. Especially when you get into 3-color decks and you're playing with these mana bases that are very well tuned to say I have exactly 4 green sources, 8 black sources, and 2 white sources. If I tap my 2 white sources for a colorless by accident, then I'm out for that turn on white sources. So.
Right. Awesome. Well, one more question for you. For anybody who's in the area or can get to the area, obviously right now we're at Rising Sun Games. This is where I do all my filming now. How often are you here if anybody wants to come in? And would you be up to people coming in and asking you for advice and such like
definitely. I'm here pretty regularly. I try to come in at least like once during the week, and then I'm here on the weekends.
Right.
I don't know how my schedule is going to change, but for the rest of the year, I'm pretty much not going to be here on Saturdays because I'll be grinding PPTQs up in Tucson and Phoenix. So,
right.
But I'll try to be here like most Sundays. I'll always be here Friday night because we have Friday Night Magic type things going on. And then during the week. But I always encourage you, if you definitely want to get competitive, we talk a lot of competitive ideas and deck lists and such on the Sierra Vista Magic League page on Facebook as well. And you can just shoot me a DM, just let me know. And I'm more than willing to answer questions. We can figure out how you can get into the competitive scene.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dana. We appreciate it. Guys, you heard it. Sierra Vista Magic League on Facebook. Hit it up. I don't care if you're not from Sierra Vista. I don't even care if you're not from Arizona. Hit up the Sierra Vista Magic League. There's a lot of, Frankie is like a legacy genius. Dana here is probably one of the most balanced players I think I've ever seen. He knows standard, he knows modern, he knows legacy. So there's a lot of people on there that can give you a lot of good advice. So again, Sierra Vista Magic League on Facebook. Thank you, Dana. We appreciate it. I think it's really educational, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.